Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and it is time once again for me to don the newsman fedora and attempt to understand what's happening with the Microsoft acquisition of Activision. So the CMA, the United Kingdom's Competition and Markets Authority, put out this right here. I'll put a link to the entire thing down there in the description. In here they give us a bunch of statements, and honestly I don't understand a whole lot of them, but they say the best way to learn something is to try to teach it to other people, and in doing so I'm learning a bit more about how all this stuff works. But there's definitely some very damning as well as interesting information here, and the acquisition that Microsoft is pushing for may not go through as a result of the United Kingdom, because the UK obviously is pretty big. They're a big part of Activision sales, and they're none too happy so far with what's been happening between Microsoft and all the other companies. So let's just go ahead and jump right on into it. The merged entity, which is Microsoft, would have significant upstream market power in publishing of games for consoles. Activision's content is an important input for PlayStation. An economically significant number of PlayStation gamers could switch to Xbox if Activision's content were no longer available or not available on equal terms on PlayStation. There are few, if any, alternative franchises with COD's level of brand awareness and popularity amongst gamers. That's actually pretty true. I mean, COD's not the biggest game out there, like we know that, but they're also like the best-selling console game every single year. So definitely a pretty big franchise. Sony is Microsoft's closest competitor in gaming consoles. Well, Microsoft said it was actually Nintendo. According to Microsoft, it goes Sony, Nintendo, then Microsoft, but right here they say, by contrast, Nintendo offers differentiated hardware and content aimed primarily at a different, for example, more family-friendly customer segment. I think that's actually true. I don't think the Nintendo Switch is necessarily competing with like the Series X or the PS5. Like, it's its own separate thing. Continuing on here to number E, Sony's existing contractual protections from existing arrangements with Activision would not undermine Microsoft's ability to engage in partial or total foreclosure, because they may not account for all the possible foreclosure mechanisms that could be available to the merged entity. They could be renegotiated or terminated early, and they may not be enforced depending on the respective parties' respective bargaining positions. So what they're saying here, and actually point this out more towards the very end of the document, that apparently Microsoft in the past has acquired publishers and made their upcoming games exclusive to Xbox, even if those publishers had previously made content available to all consoles, and Microsoft has pursued this strategy when acquiring content that is far less valuable than Activision's games, and hence far less likely to divert customers to its console. So lots of legal mumbo jumbo there, but honestly it wasn't all that hard to understand. The CMA is concerned that Microsoft would be far too powerful should they acquire Activision. And keep in mind, we're not talking just about COD. Obviously they bring COD up quite a lot in here, but Activision Blizzard is massive. We're talking Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Diablo, StarCraft, Overwatch, King, which is like Candy Crush and stuff like that. Like, Microsoft would indeed have a lot of power. We talked about in the most recent video discussing this, that Microsoft is coming back by saying that they're currently third when it comes to console gaming, and that Sony is way ahead, and hypothetically, if they were to make COD an Xbox exclusive, Sony would still have more gamers on the PlayStation, because that's how far ahead PlayStation is. Somebody in the comments of that video said, that was like dropping a martyrdom, just basically revealing to the world that COD is so small on Xbox compared to PlayStation that even if COD were Xbox exclusive, PlayStation would still have even more gamers on their platform. Like, that's actually pretty insane. But the CMA is still concerned about how this is actually all going to play out. They continue on here to say Microsoft could engage in a partial foreclosure strategy, and what they mean by that is they could basically just say, fuck you, you know, Call of Duty and all Activision stuff is now exclusive to the Xbox. So Microsoft could engage in a partial foreclosure strategy, which would allow it to capture the most dedicated Call of Duty gamers, those who would switch to Xbox to benefit from enhanced content, interoperability, that's a fun word, and earlier releases, whilst continuing to generate revenues from much less dedicated PlayStation COD gamers who may not have switched to Xbox in response to a total foreclosure strategy. I don't like that one right there. I know it sounds like a whole bunch of hoopla, but here's basically what it means. What they're saying is a partial foreclosure, right? They're saying they could potentially take all the hardcore COD gamers and make them want to leave PlayStation and come to Xbox, even if COD is still available on the PlayStation, because they could have some form of enhanced content or early releases, or dare I say, exclusivity. You know, the same shit that Sony's been doing for like almost a decade now. I bring this up, man. I bring it up. I just want, content parity and feature parity between all the platforms. I want every game to come out on all the same systems. I want the systems themselves to have to compete based on the value that they bring, the power for the bang for the buck, like the power versus cost ratio, right? That's why I want these consoles to compete on as compared to exclusivity. But when you talk about the idea of how Xbox previously had exclusivity and now Sony is just taking their turn, dude, I show this in all these videos, man. It's not even close. It's not even comparable. Sony has gotten ridiculous. The idea of like you give them a foot, they'll take a mile. That's what's happening here, man. Sony is nuts when it comes to exclusivity, and they're saying that Microsoft could end up doing the same thing, even though Sony's already in the lead. I don't think that's necessarily an argument there. But continuing on here, the CMA did not identify any persuasive evidence that Microsoft would be deterred from engaging in total or partial foreclosure strategies by the prospect of reputational damage to Xbox or COD. Now, that's something that Microsoft has said. They said that if they were to make COD an exclusive for their platform for Xbox, that it would damage not only their reputation, but it would damage the Call of Duty reputation and legacy as well. And the CMA is like, nah, it wouldn't. I mean, just look what PlayStation did. As soon as PlayStation got the exclusivity, you guys know, like, how many of you, I would love to see how many of you in the comments used to play on Xbox, but when they went to like that Sony exclusivity, did that sway you into actually purchasing like a PS4 when it came time for new consoles? Did you get a PS5 as a result of that as well? Like, if COD's your main game, did you switch to PlayStation? Because like virtually every content creator did. I didn't. I just play on PC, but virtually every content creator did, and I'm sure a lot of like average fans as well that just play the game, I'm sure that they did the exact same thing. And I really don't see a situation where Microsoft would want to get rid of all of the PlayStation fans. They said so in the video. I'll put a link to it down there in the description. I covered this recently. We had some news coming out from Microsoft where they're saying that like they wouldn't make enough money. Like, plain and simple, they would not make enough money having COD be an Xbox exclusive. It just wouldn't make any sense. Like, the amount of people on PlayStation is insane. Sure, maybe something like this could make more people want to move from PlayStation over to Xbox. That's entirely possible. But right now, like, as it sits, Sony is so far in the lead that it just wouldn't make sense from a business perspective for them to make Call of Duty an Xbox exclusive. So that's what they're saying. The CMA is saying, we're not so sure about that. We've seen you pull these shenanigans in the past. I wish they would give examples. Maybe some of you guys could give me some examples down there in the comments about how they would acquire certain publishers and then make their upcoming games exclusive to Xbox. I haven't heard too much about that. Wait, never mind. I did remember something, and this is actually pretty shitty. What? I'm not even entirely... Like, I was stoked for this game, but I didn't hear about this. Bethesda understands if PlayStation fans are pissed about Xbox exclusivity because apparently Microsoft definitively confirmed that Bethesda's eagerly anticipated Starfield, I'm stoked for that game, will be exclusive to platforms that support Xbox Game Pass. So I knew that Microsoft bought Bethesda. I wasn't aware that, like, is Fallout going to be like an Xbox and Game Pass exclusive now? Like, can you not play those games on PlayStation anymore? Holy shit, maybe the CMA's onto something here. Microsoft, what's going on here? So, of course, they're going to be saying, like, we can't make COD an Xbox exclusive. Oh, look what you did to Bethesda. Everyone loves Bethesda. Skyrim, Fallout, Elder Scrolls, all that stuff, man. How could they pull that off? I'm genuinely shocked. I was unaware of that entire situation. I usually just follow COD news. When it comes to other stuff, I really don't pay that much attention. Wow, that's actually really shitty. So the CMA actually seems to be onto something here. And Microsoft is coming out saying all the opposite. But if you look at what they've done in the past, I mean, Bethesda's a great example. I'm sure there's other examples out there as well, both for and against this argument. So we'll have to see, man. Holy shit. I was completely unaware of that. That caught me by surprise. But continuing on here, this is going to be the last little bit I want to focus on here today. It's a pretty giant document, but right here we see multi-game subscription services are becoming increasingly important, and Activision's content would likely be available on those platforms in the future. Activision's content may be as important to multi-game subscription services in future as it is to consoles today on a buy-to-play basis. So what they're theorizing here is that in the future, because everything's kind of going digital, that things like the Xbox Game Pass could be made ridiculously powerful by having Activision's games be exclusively on the Xbox Game Pass. The same thing's going on with the Bethesda things as well, right? So I can definitely see that happening. I can see a future where these subscription services are almost as important or even more so than just simply buying games are right now in 2022. Continuing on here, Game Pass is already the strongest provider of multi-game subscription services. That's true. And then combining Activision's content with Game Pass could raise barriers to entry, entrench Activision's position as the leading provider of multi-game subscription services, and substantially reduce existing and potential competition. Yeah, I can definitely see that happening, man. So Game Pass is already really good. Right now, it's kind of up to Sony to try to come up with something that's comparable, something that can compete with the Xbox Game Pass. We did learn from Microsoft, apparently, that in 2021, Sony had, like 280 first or third-party exclusives on PlayStation, which was 5 times as many exclusives as Xbox has. So Sony's already doing this with exclusivity, but they don't have a service as valuable to the consumer as Game Pass. And so it's up to Sony right now, I think, to try to get something out there that's just as good. But I definitely see what the CMA is talking about here when they say that if Activision's games were to be part of Game Pass, that would just, cement Game Pass as like by far the best possible value to the consumer, and it would just ruin all sorts of competition for the other platforms out there. And I kind of get that, but as a consumer at the same time, it's like that seems like a kind of a good thing. But for somebody that doesn't have Game Pass, you can play on PlayStation, that sucks. But at the same time, it's also a situation where it's kind of up to Sony, at least in my opinion, to put something out that's actually valuable as compared to just buying everyone with their exclusivity and things like that. So we'll have to see how things are going to play out. But ladies and gentlemen, definitely a lot of really interesting information here in this document. I'll put a link to it down there in the description. Chances are most of you aren't going to want to read through it. So I thought I should read through it myself and highlight what I believe to be the important parts that are in here and discuss them as I, again, try to get better at understanding what's happening with this acquisition. But ladies and gentlemen, that is all. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, consider leaving a like. Be sure to subscribe if you're new around here. Leave your thoughts and feedback down there in the comments, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.